Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the Public Safety Subcommittees to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblyman Hafen, Senator Goycochea, Senator Nguyen, Assemblyman Watts, Chair Harris.
Here. Thank you. All right. Committee members will probably have folks in and out today as people are presenting bills this morning. We have on the agenda a work session for the Department of Corrections. I will go ahead and turn it over to fiscal staff to walk us through the work session.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and good morning, members of the subcommittee. I am James Malone, Program Analyst, the Legislative Counsel Bureau, Fiscal Analysis Division. At today's work session, we will be discussing two issues regarding the Nevada Department of Corrections. There is no action to be taken today. Rather, this work session provides an opportunity for the subcommittee to discuss the issues and provide staff guidance on how they would like to see these budgets brought forward for consideration during the department's budget closing. Before I begin, I would like to direct subcommittee members to page 18 of your packet, which is the last page. As I discuss some of these issues and some of these institutions and the conservation camps, a map has been provided for your reference as we go through these topics. So the first major issue begins on page 1. This is the Warm Springs Correctional Center temporary closure. Currently, the governor's recommended budget recommends $27.5 million in general fund appropriations over the next biennium to fund the Warm Springs Correctional Center, although that center is currently closed. The department has indicated they do not intend to have this facility closed over the biennium. However, during their budget hearing on March 8th, 2023, they did not provide a plan or proposal for the reopening of the institution. Since then, the agency has provided a plan, and we'll be discussing the department's proposal during this work session. As background, the facility did close as of January 2nd, 2023, due to understaffing conditions at the Northern Nevada Correctional Center. Staff and offenders were transferred to various institutions, primarily to the Northern Nevada Correctional Center, to assist with some of the vacancies. Staff has provided a table at the bottom of page 1, which provides by institution the 7 major institutions, the currently filled or authorized FTE, the filled FTE, and the vacancy percentage. Currently, they're looking at 35% vacancies across their institutions. Also included is the average projected offenders. The projected offender numbers here are updated based on the February JFA projections. Staff would note, department-wide, there are 660 sworn officer vacancies as of April 6, 2023. Since the budget hearing, the department has provided an updated capacity and biennium plan. The capacity and biennium plan reviews the projections that are provided by the JFA Institute and compares it to the available beds at each of the institutions and organizes it by custody type. The bed, my apologies, the table provided on the middle of page 2 provides the bed balance for females and males by fiscal year 24 and 25. This is the bed balance after all the projected offenders have filled a bed. So what you'll see here, if it's a positive number, there is a surplus of beds. However, if there is a negative number, there is a surplus or a deficit. I would note for males in the end of fiscal year 2024 is projected to have a deficit of 142 beds for maximum custody. And then at the end of fiscal year 2025, there is a deficit of 418 beds for medium custody offenders. The agency contributes the decline of available beds due to a large CIP project program that's going to be implemented or may be implemented over the next biennium, depending on whether those CIPs are approved. If these CIPs are approved, which would be considered at another date, it would require that some of these housing units at the facilities be closed and vacant of any offenders, therefore creating a deficit in beds for medium custody offenders. I would note here for the maximum custody offenders, When the agency provided these bed balance projections, they did not include beds for the 3 closed housing units at the Ely State Prison where the maximum custody offenders are located. To address this shortfall, they would move offenders from currently open housing units to closed housing units. So there is available beds to address this. However, for the medium custody, the agency has identified a need to reopen the Warm Springs Correctional Center over the biennium to address the deficit. So on the beginning of page 3, it provides a discussion of the phase reopening plan that the department has proposed. Before I start discussing this, I would like to direct the committee members to page 4, which provides a table that you may want to reference as we discuss the plan. At the top of the table is the governor's recommended budget. This is the current funding provided for the Warm Springs Correctional Center over the next biennium as it currently is in the executive budget. The next section there is going to be the Department of Corrections phase reopening plan, and this is going to detail the cost to generally maintain the facility, to continue employment for the current 16 currently staffed employees, and both phase 1 and phase 2 of their proposal. And at the bottom of this table is going to have the comparison of funding. So for that first total expenditure authority savings, that's going to detail $11.6 million. This is going to be the difference over the biennium from what is included in the executive budget to what the department is proposing. Underneath that is the general fund portion of that, totaling $11.55 million. And then under that is the general fund savings adjusted for the offender-drivens. And the adjustment for the offender-drivens is moving costs that are associated with offender-driven to other institutions, because if this facility were to be closed, those costs would want to be budgeted in other institutions. So that there wouldn't be a realized savings for those general fund portions. So the agency does propose to begin the phase reopening in fiscal year 2025. This would require that the facility have funding in fiscal year 2024 for the general maintenance of the facility. The department indicates general maintenance would require 2 maintenance positions, 1 plumber and 1 facility supervisor to help with the maintenance. In addition to the 2 maintenance staff, the department is requesting that 16 staff, 6 sergeants, 5 senior correctional officers, 3 lieutenants, and 2 correctional caseworkers remain in the budget for both years over the next biennium. This is due to there being no available positions that are vacant for these positions to transfer into at other institutions with the same level of classification. So in order to maintain these positions at that same level of classification, funding would need to be provided within the Warm Springs Correctional Center budget to maintain these positions in fiscal year 2024 and 2025. Beginning fiscal year 2025, the agency is proposing a 2-phase reopening. The first phase would begin July 1st, and it would provide funding for 94 FTE positions to restore a majority of the functions at the facility to include administrative, professional, protective, transportation, mail, visitation, maintenance, and food services. This would also reopen 2 of the housing units, which would provide the department an additional 249 medium custody beds. Phase 2 would begin September 1st, 2024, and this would provide an additional 7 FTE and reopen the remaining 2 medium custody housing units, which would provide an additional 261 medium custody beds for a total of 510 additional medium custody beds. So fiscal staff would note the plan proposed represents a best case scenario where the department is able to successfully recruit enough personnel to operate and transfer offenders to the Warm Springs Correctional Center on or by July 1st, 2024. Although possible, it is likely that the plan presented will need to be modified to reflect the actual implementation of reopening the institution. Therefore, to ensure that budgeted funds for the reopening of the Warm Springs Correctional Center aligns with the actual implementation, consideration could be given if the phase plan is approved that the money is appropriated to the Interim Finance Committee contingency account. This would require the department to approach the IFC during the biennium and provide a refined plan for the reopening of the facility and request an allocation prior. So in order to execute this reopening plan, the department has provided a recruitment and retention strategy that begins on the bottom of page 4. They did indicate the 2-grade and cost of living adjustments provided in the executive budget would help with recruitment. However, there are systematic recruitment issues that they would like to resolve they believe would help with the recruitment. At the top of page 5 is a list of bullet points identifying their plan. One being identifying bottlenecks within their processes in human resource, partnering with local and state agencies to hold job fairs, hiring under a critical labor shortage, deploying a marketing and advertising plan to recruit younger individuals, contract with labor organizations who specialize with hospital nurse recruitment, and providing relocation allowance to out-of-state recruitments. Also, the Governor's Finance Office did submit a budget amendment totaling $50,000 in new general fund dollars over the next biennium for the department's director's office to purchase marketing and advertising supplies such as posters, billboards, videos, and social media recruitment services. That will be considered at a later date when the director's office is brought forward for closing. So to provide the committee with some context on the endeavor the department is facing over the next biennium when it comes to recruiting for their sworn officer capacity, staff has provided some information on the middle of page 5 discussing their current academies. Right now, the department runs 3 academies, one in the north in Carson City, one in the south, Indian Springs, and then one at Ely State Prison. Each academy can hold up to 30 cadets and is run quarterly, but the department has indicated if needed, could ramp up to 6 academies per year for each location, which would provide them a total of 540 cadets per year they can move through the academy system. And that's the maximum amount. So the table provided in the middle of page 5 is going to be a historical overview of the successful graduation of cadets going through the academies. I would note, starting in calendar year 2019, the department had 343 successful graduations from the academy, and it's been declining since to calendar year 2022, only having successfully graduated 114 cadets. The year-to-date provided was 31 cadets for 2023. The department attributes the decline in cadets due to a shortage of applicants, other agencies offering better pay, and overall negative public opinion of law enforcement, COVID-19 mandates during the pandemic, and their human resource office currently only having 2 recruiters. As discussed earlier, the department does require a minimum of 94 FTE to start phase 1 of reopening the Warm Springs Correctional Center. This is contingent on whether new cadets who successfully complete the academy are located near Warm Springs Correctional Center are willing to relocate to the Carson City area. If the legislature and the governor approve an overall increase in the compensation package, this may attract post-certified officers who left for compensation reasons back to the department. However, the department reports difficulty in recruiting enough officers to keep up with the current turnover rate. Therefore, a substantial number of returning officers, in combination with an increased graduation rate of cadets located near or willing to relocate to an area close to the Warm Springs Correctional Center, would need to be required to effectively reopen the Warm Springs Correctional Center and maintain the same or greater level of staffing at currently open facilities. So beginning on the top of page 6, staff has provided various options for the committee to consider. Option A would recommend approval as recommended in the governor's budget, which would provide $27.5 million for the Warm Springs Correctional Center over the next biennium, although the facility is closed and is not planned to reopen until fiscal year 2025. Option B would recommend approval of the department's proposal to fund the general maintenance of the facility in fiscal year 2024 and allocate $9.6 million to the interim finance committee contingency account for the phased reopening in fiscal year 2025. This would require that the department come to the IFC during the interim and prepare a refined plan prior to reopening. Or option C, recommend approval of approximately $2.0 million in general fund appropriations over the biennium to maintain the closure of the facility in both fiscal year 24 and 25. This option is the least flexible for the agency in reopening the Warm Springs Correctional Center and would impact its ability to successfully complete CIP projects over the biennium. However, this would allow them to focus on recruiting for the 660 sworn officer vacancies they currently are experiencing department-wide. If option C is selected, there are two sub-options to consider. One, and this has to do with the currently 16 filled positions at the Warm Springs Correctional Center. Maintain funding for the 16 currently filled positions for both years over the next biennium. And this would require the department to either develop a plan and return to the 2025 legislature for the reopening, transfer the incumbents to other vacant positions as openings become available, or eliminate the positions once the incumbent leaves the department for employment elsewhere. Or two, fund the 16 currently filled positions at the Warm Springs Correctional Center, totaling $1.8 million in general fund appropriations for fiscal year 2024 only. So, and overall, if option B or C is selected, the subcommittee should also recommend to make the recommendation to transfer the offender-driven budget authority for Warm Springs Correctional Center included in the executive budget, totaling $1.4 million, to the Northern Nevada Correctional Center. This would ensure the department has appropriate funding available for the projected number of offenders incarcerated at the Northern Correctional Center in the event the department is unable to recruit the necessary staff to reopen Warm Springs Correctional Center. With that, I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Committee members, the entire purpose of this work session is to gather the information we need to make a decision when closing comes before us. And so I'm opening it up for any questions that committee members may have that might inform what choice they would like to pursue. Are there any questions on the Warm Springs Correctional Center for staff? Or we have the Department of Corrections here at this time. Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the thorough review of all the information and the map. You knew I'd be excited about the map. Under option C, am I understanding correctly that the third sentence when it says, excuse me, focusing, or a little bit after the beginning, that if we were to choose this, this would allow the department to focus its recruitment strategy on filling the 660 sworn officer vacancies. That's not just in this one area of the institution. This is across the board. Is that what the 660 sworn officer? Follow up, if I may. Thank you. So, and just to make sure that none of the other options have that possibility, if I'm understanding correctly, that it's only option C that would allow for the focus to be on filling the vacancy rates?
James Malone for the record. All options have the ability to fill for all the other institutions. Option C stating that if the Warm Springs Center is only to maintain the general maintenance over the biennium, there wouldn't be positions for the agency to fill there. So therefore, the positions elsewhere would be a focus rather than filling positions to reopen a facility. And I hope that clarified.
Additional questions? Okay, let's keep going. Okay, just kidding. Let's stick with Warm Springs. Assemblywoman
Thank you.
Anderson.
It's not necessarily about this budget, but about the process that you would like us to go under as a committee. Do you want us to give direction to you right now, or do we want to discuss them? Or is it just right now informational, and at the end, we'll like say, hey, we're going to do option B with a little bit of C sprinkled in. How's this going to work out?
Assemblywoman Anderson, today will be only informational. We will be making these choices and giving staff direction when we close the budget. Thank you so much for the clarification. You got it. Okay, just kidding. We're actually going to make sure that we give fiscal staff a little bit of direction so they know what options to bring us at the closing. And so I believe we'll do that through motion or just a general directive. Okay. Committee members, any discussion on what options we would like fiscal staff to bring us when we do the closing? Assemblywoman Dickman.
So I think it's important that they have the flexibility to do the Warm Springs thing. So, you know, if they can hire the officers, but I think we need to keep it going. So I'd be kind of leaning towards B, but.
Further discussion, committee members? Assemblywoman Anderson.
I also am leaning towards B. I like the idea of also IFC being part of the discussion as well, like with updates. I would like to figure out some way to also continue the recruitment strategy that is mentioned in option C, because I think when the department presented, that has been a huge issue. However, with knowing that all the options have that, I'm leaning towards B as well, based upon the IFC updates and the ability for us to continue discussions.
Other discussion? Okay, the committee would like to see option B fleshed out and brought to us when we close this budget.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Would you like me to begin with the second major issue?
Yes, please.
Again, James Malone, Legislative Council Bureau, Fiscal Analysis Division. The second issue begins on the bottom of page 7 in your packet, and this is the department-wide conservation camps and the temporary closures and future plans. Due to a combination of high staffing vacancies and the unavailability of qualified offender work crews, the department has closed 2 conservation camps, specifically the Ely Conservation Camp and the Tonopah Conservation Camp. The governor's recommended budget includes funding for staffing and offenders at the Tonopah Conservation Camp and reflects the continued closure of the Ely Conservation Camp. However, the department has stated that it does not intend to reopen Tonopah. As a result, there is a discrepancy between the governor's budget and the department's plan over the next biennium. As background, the Ely Conservation Camp did close July 10th, 2020. This is prior to the 2021 legislative session. Accordingly, the legislature did appropriate $2.6 million in general funds to the Interim Finance Committee for the reopening of the Ely Conservation Camp if the department approached them and could demonstrate that it could be reopened. The department has not approached the IFC during the interim and does not intend to approach IFC to reopen this due to staffing concerns at the Ely State Prison. For the Tonopah Conservation Camp, this facility was closed November 2022 due to high staffing vacancies, and it was determined that it was no longer safe to operate the camp and cover the 24/7 operations. The offenders were transferred to the POH Conservation Camp. The department has indicated that the Tonopah Conservation Camp that there is no plans to reopen over the next biennium, and there are 6 personnel still employed that are preparing the facility for mothball status. The Wells Conservation Camp is a part of this overall discussion. It isn't closed at this time. However, they are not operating any offender crews. The department has indicated due to staffing difficulties on the Nevada Division of Forestry side on being able to fill their supervisory positions, work crew could not be operated out of that facility. So those offenders were transferred out and close custody offenders were transferred in. So although the facility is operating, it is not operating as a conservation camp, it is operating as a close custody facility. So on the page 8 and continuing into page 9, staff has provided an overview of the land ownership and lease requirements. Each of the conservation camps does have a different property ownership, or various different property ownerships, such as fee title and recreation and public purpose patents with the United States Bureau of Land Management. And I'll direct you to that table on page 9 where it lists each conservation camp, the status, the ownership title, and if there are any reversionary clauses upon termination or the end of the lease. I will note that a majority of these locations are operating under a recreation and public purpose agreement with the Bureau of Land Management. There are 2 state-owned facilities according to the State of Nevada Division of State Lands, that being the Stewart Conservation Camp and the Silver Springs Conservation Camp. Overall issue of the conservation camps as provided by the department. The Nevada Division of Forestry, Fuels, and Fire Squads require 740 offenders at a minimum, but currently have only 300 qualified offenders. This has resulted in a decline in the number of wildland crews from 15 statewide in previous years and to only 4 crews and 3 squads as of April 5th, 2023. The department attributes this decline to Assembly Bill 236 of the 2019 legislative session that reduced the number of offenders eligible to work in the conservation work program, as offenders meeting the criteria are now eligible for parole. This has resulted in a shorter length of offenders being able to work at the camps. That requires constant training and turnover by NDF supervisory staff. The table on the bottom of page 9 here provides an overview by location, the number of active crews and squads as provided by the Nevada Division of Forestry. In addition, a similar table is provided on page 10 to what was provided for Warm Springs Correctional Center, which details by conservation camp the authorized FTE, the filled, and the vacancy percentage. For the camps, they are currently experiencing a 34% vacancy rate overall, and then the updated average projected offenders. I will note here, although the average projected offenders are showing 891 offenders in fiscal year 2024 and 903 offenders in fiscal year 2025, not all minimum capacity offenders qualify for conservation camp work crews. According to the department, the offenders cannot participate either due to a medical limitation or cannot pass what they call is a PAC test, which requires an offender to be able to carry 40 pounds for an extended period of time, yes. So moving on to the overall plan and the long-term vision for the conservation camps. The Division of Forestry and the Department of Corrections is proposing to consolidate their camp program for offenders to address wildfires to the 4 most stable conservation camps in the state. Those 4 are the 3 Lakes Valley, Jean, Stewart, and Pioche conservation camps. According to the department, with the number of eligible offenders with these 4 locations, they are projecting that they'll still have 400 beds available in addition to the offenders that they're projected to have if this consolidation were to occur. Now, for the first phase, which would be the next biennium, the department is proposing to consolidate to only 6 conservation camps. The 6 conservation camps proposed to consolidate to are the Stewart, 3 Lakes, Jean, Pioche, Wells, and Carlin conservation camps. This would result in the closure of the Ely Conservation Camp, the Tonopah Conservation Camp, and the Humboldt Conservation Camp. So currently for the Ely Conservation Camp, the governor's recommended budget already has a decision unit that recommends $2.7 million in general fund appropriations be reduced for the continued closure of this facility. This facility is operating under a Recreation and Public Purpose Act from the Bureau of Land Management that mandates the removal of all infrastructure and equipment and the restoration of the landscape to a natural state upon termination, or when not used for 5 consecutive years. Based on the closure date, the 5 years will not be used by July 25th, which is the start of fiscal year 2026. If approved, the department would have the biennium to either renegotiate the patent with the Bureau of Land Management, repurpose the facility, or request funding to rehabilitate the land back to its natural state during the 2025 legislative session. I would just note here, they are operating a conservation or a crew out of the Ely State Prison with through a modified housing unit outside the secured perimeter. It provides 1 project squad. If the consolidation plan is approved, the intent is that the Nevada Division of Forestry would provide a reclassified state firefighter positions out at the Ely conservation camps to provide coverage in that area in the event that there are no offenders, and the offenders at the Ely State Prison would transfer to other facilities. I would note here the reclassification of those firefighter positions has been submitted as a budget amendment and is not available for consideration today, but will be brought to the subcommittee for consideration when the Nevada Division of Forestry budgets are brought for closure. In the event that the reclassification is not approved, the department would maintain the offender work crew out of the Ely State Prison. For the Tonopah Conservation Camp, as part of the phase consolidation, they're looking to close this facility over the next biennium. There are currently 6 positions employed at that facility. The recommendation would maintain the 6 currently employed positions for fiscal year 2024 to assist with the transfer of the equipment and prepare the facility for mothball status, which is the general maintenance of the facility on a permanent closure. And it would allow time for the incumbents to seek employment within the department at other facilities. And then the plan would be to mothball the facility in fiscal year 2025. So on the top of page 12, staff has provided another table similar to what was provided for Warm Springs that details the current budget as it's reflected in the governor's recommended budget, totaling $3.7 million over the biennium. The department's consolidation plan for the facility would reduce funding, but would provide funding for a total of $1 million over the biennium. And the general fund savings adjusted for offenders, if the plan is approved, would result in $2.3 million in general fund savings over the next biennium. The Tonopah camp is operating under a Recreation and Public Purpose lease agreement with the Bureau of Land Management that expires on January 1st, 2029. If the camp is closed, the department would have by the end of the lease to either renegotiate with Bureau of Land Management, repurpose the facility, or request additional funding to rehabilitate the land back to its natural state. And then for the Humboldt Conservation Camp, so the proposal also involves the closure of this facility, and it's driven by several factors. The department indicates there's difficulty recruiting and retaining staff. There's a decline in the number of available offenders and the deteriorating condition of the facility. The proposal would allow for the currently 10 filled positions at that facility for a full year in fiscal year 2024 to find positions within the department or elsewhere. All right, so at the top of page 13, another similar table has been provided that details the governor's recommended budget at $3.7 million over the 23-25 biennium. The department's proposed consolidation plan totaling $1.4 million over the 23-25 biennium, and then the overall general fund savings as adjusted for offender drivens of $1.9 million over the 23-25 biennium. Humboldt is operating also under a recreation and public purpose agreement with the Bureau of Land Management that expires on October 2020 or 2030. This would require, if closed, the department or another state agency to negotiate terms for a new lease or remove any improvements or equipment upon termination. Okay, so that covers an overview of the proposals for the three facilities the department is recommending to close over the next biennium. There is additional information that's related to this overall consolidation plan that was provided by the Nevada Division of Forestry, and I'll just provide a high-level overview of that. But the budget amendment being submitted for consideration at a later date would involve the reclassification of 34 vacant crew supervisor positions to 34 firefighter positions and include an additional 8 firefighter positions for a total of 42 firefighter positions the department would utilize to cover gaps in coverage where offenders may not be available. All right, so the decisions being presented for the committee today begin at the top of page 15. The first one being for the Ely Conservation Camp. And there's two options here. Option A would be to approve the governor's recommendation to close the Ely Conservation Camp and continue the facility in a mothball status, which would result in $2.7 million and a reduction of $2.7 million in general fund appropriations as recommended in the executive budget. If option A is selected, there's two sub-options to consider, and they being the permanent closure or the temporary closure of the facility. Or option B, which would be not to approve the governor's recommendation to permanently close the Ely Conservation Camp and provide $2.7 million in general fund appropriations over the biennium to fund the facility and staffing. And I'll pause there before we move on to the Tonopah Conservation Camp for committee discussion, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Committee members, do we have any questions on Ely? Assemblywoman Anderson.
It's not really a question, it's more just of a thought. I'm struggling with this because of the senator at the end of this area, Senator Gokachia's comments many times about if we were to close Ely, how much space then is that that's not going to have a way for us to fight fires and other things? And so I'm just struggling with closing. At the same time, and again, this is just me being everything in my mind coming out, we don't have the staff for it either. So we have to be thinking about the safety of our state, but then also the realities of our staffing. And so I'm really struggling with both options that are being given. So if there could be a third option of, a genie coming in and fixing all of this, that'd be great. But I don't see that happening. But I'm really struggling with closing these when I look at our map of our beautiful state and how much land that would be unprotected. I'm really struggling with this. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
Director Zorinda, could we invite you to the table at this point? And before I go to Senator Goycochea, would you please just let the committee know, with a permanent closing of the Ely Conservation Camp, if that is what we in fact decide to do, what is the department's plan to ensure that that area is able to have a crew fighting fires and ensure that there is enough coverage over the whole state?
So first, James Arenda, Director for the Department of Correction, on the record. Couple things that involve in this. First of all, there's even bills out there today. I think there's one at 1230, Senate Bill 416, that also, if those bills go through, it actually reduces our minimum even more. So having what we look at today, we don't have enough minimum security offenders to actually fill these beds for the firefighting crews, where we may even have less as that comes on, so we don't even have the bodies for the offenders to even to put in there for the training, is why NDF is having a tough time of what to do with crews. Staffing, my major concern with staffing, when I do get staffing, is the higher level facilities, because that's where our safety and security issues on my end are, not talking about the community with the firefighting. What I was told from NDF is that they do have opportunities, if it's presented in their budget, to be able to hire from outside to cover those crews that they're going to lose. They have summer crews that are national summer crews they can hire. There are avenues for them, but on my end, I don't see any options for us to even to fill these beds, even if we kept it open forever. I don't have people to put in it, offenders or staff. So, I mean, I think that's the problem I'm dealing with.
Senator Goycochea.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate Director Zarenda. And, and I don't want to, pull the plug on Ely any more than anyone else does, but I do think there might be a little more ability there in the Ely camp, because we do have a small crew that is working out of the max there, that small crew. And but the other piece that really concerns me is, if we do permanently mothball Ely, then why are we having the discussions about Humboldt, Wells, and Tonopah? We can't close them all, or else we're just going to vacate the program. And I'm sorry if NDF might think they can hire enough summer help, but good luck at that. So these honor camps do provide a service. Yeah, and Ely is part of my district, and that honor camp used to provide a ton of service for the, not only firefighting, but just services all. But I understand the concerns we've got there, and the fact that we can backfill it a little bit out of the max. If that's a commitment from DOC, I think we can go there. But then I get really concerned as we move on into the agenda, and Tonopah and Humboldt and these other closures. Are we going to vacate the camp program or not? I do think it's viable, and I know if I was incarcerated and I could get 2 for, 2 days for every day served, and if we can get these adjustments taken care of as far as what they get paid while they are working, I think it's could become even a far better program. So that's my thoughts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Director Zarenda, any response to the general comments of Senator Goycochea?
So James Zarenda, for the record, right now I believe we have 380 offenders that actually could meet the criteria of being in the camps for the NDF. Those numbers, like I said, will be depleting as time goes on, especially when if these new bills come up. Even if I filled up every single one of them, I don't think there's any way that I could even fill the Ely camp. We do have a location that is our minimum security beds that are at our maximum at Ely, where they are now, where they are housed now, and they can still do the training out of there if they're pulled. NDF should be able to figure a way to get them out of there. We also have additional beds in there of minimum securities that are available that we can use for that purpose at our max, but I can't see any way that we could actually fill our Ely camp.
All right, thank you, Director Zarenda. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members as we talk about Ely Conservation Camp? Okay, staff, please bring back option A in both forms, A1 and A2, for the committee to consider at closing. And Director, I don't know if you want to get your steps in and, get up and go back, but I'm thinking we're probably going to call you back on Tonopah, so you might want to sit. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Chair Harris. Moving on to the Tonopah Conservation Camp. These options are going to be similar for the Ely. Option A would be to approve the department's proposal to close the Tonopah Conservation Camp as part of their overall consolidation plan and maintain the facility at mothball status over the 23-25 biennium. In addition, direct the department and the Governor's Finance Office to work with fiscal staff to transfer any offender-driven expenditures. If option A is selected, there are various sub-options to consider. A1 and A2 involve the 6 currently employed incumbents at the Tonopah location. Option A1 would be to approve the department's proposal of $582,619 in general fund dollars to continue the employment of these 6 individuals in fiscal year 2024 to assist with mothballing the facility and provide the incumbents time to accept employment opportunities elsewhere or within the department. Or option A2, which is approve a reduced period of time to fund the 6 currently filled positions at the Tonopah Conservation Camp. Staff has provided a table there with various options for the subcommittee's consideration, ranging from 3 to 9 months, and the associated costs for those. And the A3 and A4 pertain to whether the committee would like this closure to be a permanent closure or a temporary closure over the biennium. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Committee members, questions on the Tonopah Conservation Camp, either for staff or for Department of Corrections? All right, Senator Goycochea.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And of course, my real concern with Tonopah is the sheer distance out of that camp. You know, Ely's not so bad. We've got Pioche. You know, we've also got the Cardin camp, and so we can backfill. But when you take Tonopah out of the equation, I mean, then it becomes a long, long ways to anywhere. I understand that you have neither the staffing nor the inmates to put there. I guess I'm looking, if we really focus on maintaining Tonopah in the future, if we do a short-term closure, do you think, Director Zarenda, that there is the ability then that we could actually staff and provide the inmates, and maybe we end up with, you know, 2 or 3, let's not call them super camps, but they would be functional camps, fully staffed and with the inmates there in place. Is that where we're headed? I guess is what I'm asking you, Director Zarenda. And again, whether it's people working out of Lovelock, outside the Max in Ely, some crews here in Carson, and Tonopah. Pioche seems to stay together all the time. You seem to be able to provide for that. Could we make a camp in Tonopah like Pioche where it becomes functional, and the geographic area it covers would be beneficial, I think, for everyone in the state? Even though everybody says Tonopah's down in the desert, you know, it's not far to Belmont, you know, Arc Dome, some really special country if we let it burn up. If we can't, we need to have that. So long-winded question, I know. Do you think we can end up with 3 or 4 super camps and actually provide the service?
So James Renda, for the record, the Tonopah issue, I do not see any future for the Tonopah issue. The staffing is almost impossible for us to staff there. We're only at 6 officers out of 12 right now. That was probably one of our highest level staffing in a long time. So they're constantly working 24 hours a day when you're trying to get coverage, even with the offender population going down. What I think we could look at, and I know we are talking, could be up to a 4-hour distance, but is increasing the NDF presence at like Stewart or at the staging areas that are in Carson City or even Lovelock to be able to get the staging there for the NDF to be able to send them. But it is a distance. Even 3 Lakes down in Indian Springs could actually, depending on where the fires are, they could stage in Indian Springs and might be able to send the crews from Indian Springs to the Tonopah area, geographic areas. So there's ways to get them there, just time frames are going to be different. They're going to be, I know every minute counts, but I don't see a way that there will be able to be getting any from actual Tonopah.
I appreciate that, but in your honest opinion is you just don't know how you can man and staff Tonopah. and
James
maintain
Renda,
it?
for the record, yes. And like I said, I think our numbers, you're going to see even less availability of those minimums. And I'm too nervous to put mediums, low-level mediums, to really reclassify to put out there, because now we're talking about public safety.
Back to staff, though, but there is an option that we can temporarily close it, not do a full closure on this, on Tonopah.
James Malone, for the record, that is correct. If the committee would like to take action on temporary closure, it would impact how the budget is built into the next biennium. If the committee takes action on temporary closure, the funding would come back next biennium as fully funded with an accompanying decision in unit to either continue the closure, maintain it, or permanently close the facility.
I appreciate that, but I guess at this point, if you're telling, as a director, and we're trusting in you, that, you know, you're not going to be able to keep it open, but I surely don't want to, I don't want to turn it back on the RPP. I think we will see, and we're coming out of a good precip year, and we're going to have a lot of stuff burning, especially in the mid-levels across this state, where it's a little drier. They've got a lot of moisture. We're going to have a lot of production, and we're going to see fire by fall. And I think I'm really concerned about that. Tonopah is the geographic center of the state, and if you're going to respond, we need that facility. I don't know how we get there, but I definitely just thoughts. I'm not in favor of closing Tonopah. It's tough enough for me with Ely, but again, we do have backup between Pioche and the Max there, and we need to focus on that. Although we're looking at, I don't want to call it inmate labor, but I mean, it is actually a service they do provide if we can just figure out how to compensate them enough.
Additional questions or comments? Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, and I mean, listening to this and being part of this discussion, what a horrible situation we've put our communities into, and what a horrible situation we put our inmates into, as well as the department, because we're literally not having enough people that are committing the crimes to be able to provide an essential service of firefighting. And so listening to this, that's the first thing I think of, is we've truly created a horrible, infinite issue that has nothing to do with helping people get back on the street after making a mistake, and also nothing to help our state. And so I'm wondering if, I'm going to throw a curveball on this one. I'm wondering if, with using the information with the renegotiating the lease with the BLM, if there's possibly a way to also utilize that renegotiation process to possibly figure out if there's a way to do something with the BLM and the fire services, and I don't know what department that would be, whatever department it is, to try to figure out if there's a way that we would not be using prison workers in this way. And that could be possibly part of the renegotiation process on the lease with the BLM. I have no idea what that looks like, and that is more than likely a fairy tale sponsored by Grimm's, but I am more than welcome to propose it, because I don't think we're doing the right thing by thinking that the Department of Corrections should be the one providing this essential service to our state. And I'm just wondering if there's another way for us to utilize this facility in a different way.
Senator Goycochea.
In response to that, I've worked with a lot of RPPs, and again, that's recreation public purpose. Clearly, the state could not use those camps as inmate camps and could use them as fire centers.
Okay, other questions or comments from committee members? All right, staff, we'd like to see A1 come back. And I know we have to make a choice, but we want to see A3 or A4 as well. We won't pull the trigger on that one quite yet. And that will give us time, committee members, to discuss further options. And when it comes to closing, we will have to decide whether we're going to close it permanently and give them the flexibility to renegotiate with BLM, or if we're going to close it temporarily and allow them to come back in 2025 and essentially have this same discussion. Okay? Great. Let's move on to Humboldt, please.
Thank you, Chair Harris. James Malone, LCB Fiscal for the record. The Humboldt options are provided on the bottom of page 16, and they follow a similar order as to the options presented for Tonopah. Option A would be to approve the department's proposal to close the Humboldt Conservation Camp as part of the overall consolidation plan and maintain the facility in a mothball status over the 23-25 biennium. This will also direct the department and the Governor's Finance Office to work with fiscal staff to transfer any associated offender-driven expenditures. The sub-options include, for A1 and A2, the continuation of the filled positions currently at Humboldt. There are 10 positions, so A1 would continue those positions in fiscal year 2024, or A2, which would provide for a reduced period for those 10 currently filled positions. And again, another table is provided with the associated timeframes and costs. And then A3 would be to either permanently close the facility or temporarily. A4 would be to temporarily close the facility. And option B would be not to approve the department's proposal to close Humboldt Conservation Camp and maintain the $1.9 million in general fund appropriations to operate the facility. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Committee members, questions on Humboldt Conservation Camp? Senator Goycochea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I assume that as we deal with this, we're, it would all be part of the same budget. And again, as I'm sitting there rapidly thinking about it, maybe this is something, if we're looking at putting something into the budget as a budget amendment and increasing it, maybe we need to be talking to NDF rather than DOC.
And Senator Goycochea, I'll let staff correct me if I'm wrong, but we will be having NDF come before us in their closing, as part of the way that we do our budgetary process, of course. When we work session NDOC, we're going to have NDOC in front of us, although there are obviously pieces that intertwine. When are we having NDF coming before us? Do we know? I know we had a guess last I heard, maybe late April, early May.
For the record, Brody Leiser, LCB Fiscal. Chair Harris, I believe NDF will be scheduled to close May 2nd is the closing date, and I believe there is a representative from Forestry here today, if you'd like to hear from them.
Absolutely. Let's spread the love. Thanks for being here. Come on down. Senator Goycochea, questions for NDF?
Actually, I'm just trying to catch up, and I apologize. I was upstairs, but maybe Miss Anderson has some. Let me get cued in a little bit.
She sure does. Miss Anderson, please.
Yay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming down to speak with us about it. Has there been any discussion about possibly trying to have any of the conservation camps under your department, especially the Tonopah area as well as the Humboldt area? And if so, how difficult would that be in staffing and everything else? Because again, I don't think it's right that we continue to utilize the offender-driven process. So just wondering what your thoughts would be on that, and if we need to have a more thorough discussion at another date.
All right, thank you for the question. Eric Antel, Deputy Administrator with the Division of Forestry, through Madam Chair to the Assemblywoman.
You can go direct.
Thank you. That is the plan. That is ultimately the reclassification of the 34 crew supervisor vacant positions, is to introduce this workforce that is more reliable and not tied towards only fire suppression offered by offenders. So within the Tonopah direct question is we would introduce 10 seasonal staff to work out of that facility in the mothball status to provide the fire protection within Tonopah, which ultimately, to Senator Goycochea's point, it is very remote. If there is a fire, there will be a high amount of grass this year. this new workforce, without using offenders, will be more flexible and more responsive within the state than the offenders have been in the past. Unfortunately, offender work crews require night custody, so this will also compound the issue for NDOC, as you know, to leave the footprint of the camp to go to a fire response requires not just one custody officer to attend or follow with that crew, it also requires backfill with that custody officer. So that's a challenge that we've had operationally collectively together, and this new work, the reclassification of the 42 additional free, if you will, non-incarcerated fire crews will really offer a lot more protection within the state, as well as not make the state of Nevada dependent on the offenders for fire suppression.
We'll go to Senator Goycochea, and then we'll come down to you, Assemblywoman.
Thank you. I really appreciate, but then my next issue, we're talking about part-timers, only going to be summer crew, I assume, and then we fall short in the habitat work and or the community service work. Will these, you're saying seasonal firefighters, they won't be, we're not really looking at putting a couple camps in where we'd have crews available, you know, year-round, because, and I think even what DOC charges, and I know what some of the local governments pay for crews, it almost becomes self-sustaining.
Eric Antel, Deputy Administrator with Forestry, for the record. Senator Goycochea, you're 100% right. So the only crew that we're going to use seasonal is in Tonopah, and that is due to recruitment challenges that we've experienced within forestry. All the other crews within the 42 reclass are not including the seasonals. Those are seasonal positions we already have through grant funding, et cetera. But the 42 new positions are full-time positions that will be placed in those geographical locations as a full crew in Ely, a full squad in Carlin, a squad in Tonopah, a squad in Humboldt, with the ability to pair up to make a full crew, as well as offering that full-time protection. Because Senator Goycochea, and I appreciate the comment, because that's the biggest concern we have at forestry. It's not always about suppression, it's the pre-suppression and the post-suppression. So if we don't mitigate and get ahead of taking care of the maintenance and the mitigation that's needed, then we'll just have more and more fires as we move, which ultimately takes more staffing within suppression, as well as if we don't correct or do the correct rehab and revegetation, then we'll change the burn cycle on the footprint of acreage. So you'll see, you know, in the footprint of a fire that it'll only be cheatgrass, and then the burn cycle will rinse and repeat every 1 to 2 years. So thank you for the comment, and yes, that the plan is to address that.
Madam Chair, then I guess I'd suggest, maybe, I don't know how we do this with staff, but we really need to see what NDF is going to propose to do before I think we can make a qualified decision on DOC and these other camps, although I understand we're just trading money here, and whether it goes to DOC or NDF, but I think this committee is standing here saying, hey, we don't want to see these camps completely closed. They've got to provide that resource for the state of Nevada. I'll let you determine what budget we hear again.
Assemblywoman Brown May.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify, I believe that we have talked about previously that your intention for fire suppression in the camps and staffing of the camps is still in partnership with the Department of Corrections, and that your staffing would be coming from the people who are leaving incarceration after having completed their sentence, and that the intention is for it to be a re-entry employment opportunity that would then allow folks the opportunity to be employed later. Am I correct in that assumption?
Eric Antel, Deputy Administrator with Forestry. Assemblywoman, yes, that is the long-term goal. With 9 camps and the short staffing or staffing issues that we both have in both agencies, it's difficult to offer the correct amount of programming to the offender. Ultimately, within AB 236, they're not with us long enough. And not all camp locations have the ability to provide programs or the correct programs. And I don't want to speak for the director, but collectively, these 4 established camps have the right footprint for programming, would offer ability within the restructure of staffing for NDF and custody, or DOC, to work towards new initiatives such as the state of Arizona called the Phoenix Crew, where past offenders would come from a fire crew and then be employed full-time within the state into a new position. And then that would be funded through a budget ask. So that's the initiatives that the Division of Forestry and Corrections have talked about, and we would like to move towards once we can get to a footprint of 4 camps compared to 9 that we can operate with staffing today.
Director Zorinda, can you please confirm that if we approve the closure of this camp, that NDOC would be able to renegotiate a new lease that would allow NDF to step in and maybe operate out of that camp?
James Arenda, for the record, I don't know. I'm not sure what the lease agreement is and who that's even with. I think, it's with Bureau of Land Management, but I'm not sure. So I'm not sure all the camps have different agreements, and I'm not sure specifically on that camp what the agreement was for that purpose.
All right, thank you, Director. Can I put that on your list of things to bring back to us? Great, thank you. Assemblywoman Anderson?
Mine was kind of along the same lines of when you're saying the closure or being put into mothball status, that has to do with your department, but not necessarily with our state. And so again, it's along those same lines. But then I also just I love the name of the Phoenix for a firefighting group because of also the mythological things. So that's a wonderful name. But I just was trying to figure that out. The exact same question. Mothball status is from your department, not necessarily for our state, is what the hope is, if I'm understanding that correctly.
So James Renner, for the record, that's correct. It's just a mothball status part of Department of Corrections because it involves the budget piece for us.
Senator Goycochea?
I'll negotiate the RPP. I feel that comfortable with that. It's the state of Nevada, whether it's DOC or NDF. It is recreation, public purpose. I think we're covered there. And I also, like you, when they're in mothballs, even Ely, you've still got people working there and trying to maintain those facilities. So we're actually got a cost there and no real benefit because, again, you can't hire those crews or they can't go out and do habitat work and actually recover and get paid. So it's beneficial for us to have them staffed. And I don't care whose flag is flying. It's better to have them staffed. So thank you with that. And I'm looking forward to working on this one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Are there additional comments from committee members or questions? Okay, staff, my estimation of the robust discussion that the committee has had is that we're looking at something similar to the previous conservation camp. We'd like to see A1 and please bring back both A3 and A4. All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and, I think that was the last one. Did we make it? Okay. Well done, committee, on your first work session. Thank you, Director. We appreciate you all being here. And Deputy Director, thank you so much. Is there anyone here for public comment? Okay, I don't see anyone in Las Vegas either. BPS, can we check the phones, please?
We have no callers for public comment.
All right, thank you. Before we adjourn, committee members, please continue to think these issues over. We can't sit on the fence for forever, so we're going to have to come down, and please feel free to share your thoughts and concerns with staff, with me, with Chair Watts, as we make our way through this process. With that, we are adjourned. Everybody have a great day.